We're going to have a bit of fun today. We're going to discover the suburbs to avoid based on news, crime statistics, and real data.
Welcome to The Elephant in the Room. This is the podcast where we love to talk about the big things in property that never usually get talked about. I'm Veronica Morgan, real estate agent, buyer's agent, co-host of Foxtel's Location Australia, and author of Auction Ready.
And I'm Chris Bates, mortgage broker. Before we get started, I need to let you know that nothing we say on here can be taken as personal advice. We always recommend you engage the services of a professional.
Don't forget that you can access the transcript for this episode on the website, as well as download our free full or forecaster report, Which Experts Can You Trust to Get It Right? theelephantintheroom.com.au.
What should probably be Australia's most boring property podcast, hosted by a tax depreciation expert and a data scientist, has surprisingly become one of my personal favourites. And I'm joined by the potty mouth duo today, Mike Mortlock and Kent Lardner. Welcome, boys.
Thank you. That's good fun.
No swearing. Mike is just awful at the swearing stuff. I'm normally under control.
I don't have a big deck with buttons, okay? So now for anyone who hasn't listened to Suburb Trolls, as that is these boys' podcast I'm referring to, it's touted as Australia's worst behaved property investment podcast. The Trolls promise foul manners and even fouler opinions, and they actually make me sound genteel, right? They say words on air that I haven't let pass my lips on air.
I think we've delivered on that promise. I think we are worst behaved, and we do have some pretty foul opinions.
Yes,
we do.
And we've got an objective to lower the bar every week.
And so now this is a January episode. It's a holiday episode for our listeners on The Elephant, because you know what? Let's relax and have a bit of fun. And we want to provide some holiday entertainment with a little bit of information in there as well. And I have to say that your byline for the podcast is, if you like your property, was it served up on a tray of
property
data?
Stats.
No, it sounds like Dentec, and I've been wanting to know what Dentec was, but I looked on your website and found, anyway, it's data. So look, we really appreciate you joining us today. Let's take a tour through the less salacious suburbs of Australia. I want to really tap into what the news, the crime stats, where it aligns with property data to let us know we should be avoiding buying in them.
We probably should have done some research, Kent.
Well,
let's start with Logan.
Our go-to is always Logan, but there's always a surprise, because what Mike does is he picks on crime stats, and it's not always the lower socioeconomic suburbs that rise to the top. So when it comes to importing the big stuff, as you could probably guess, that gravitates towards the well-heeled eastern suburbs locations for the big crime stats for drug imports, where we just assumed it was going to be Cabramatta.
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? Because it's about the type of crime, right? And what type of crime is more likely to impact on property prices is the fact that basically they've got a big rubber dinghy that they've got to scuba dive out to off the coast of, I don't know, where, maybe
Vaucluse.
Yeah.
And so they're bringing in their big bricks of ice or bricks of cocaine or whatever it is. I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I've got no idea. I've never actually ever really looked at this.
Come on.
Versus in Cabramatta, potentially, where the type of crime is different but might actually have a greater impact on the streets and the safety. And I'm really wading into really difficult territory here because I don't know. And I shouldn't have named Cabramatta because I could be wrong. And I don't want to cast aspersions on Cabramatta. So that's what you're here for, because you guys have actually done the research and I haven't. So how does it pan out?
Sometimes we don't even do the research. We just cast aspersions.
I wondered about that.
The research starts about 3 minutes prior to recording.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Let's Google this.
Yeah, I'm interested in sort of the weird crimes and the places that I really enjoy are the ones, like, because crime is normally reported in number of instances per 100 population. There's one place in South Australia. I think it was it Elizabeth? If not, I've just destroyed their property prices because I was comparing two suburbs. One was Elizabeth. One of them had a 0.46 instances of crime per 100 people per year, and the top place in Adelaide had either 106 or 109. So there's more crimes than there are people in a certain year.
It's one or two really, really busy people out on parole, or it's a good balance, a good average.
Yeah, and we try, and it's hard too because we're trying to do funny crimes, and crime isn't necessarily funny in and of itself. It can be, but then we don't want to talk about crimes like, when we talk about assault, we sort of try to tease out things like domestic violence, right? Because that's not funny in any way, shape, or form. But in some ways, like pornography is funny because we're trying to figure out, well, how is that like a crime? Because, well, yeah, pornography, like consenting pornography is
there's a knock at the door.
Yeah.
It's the police. They're on to me.
Yeah, but these have to be recorded as actual crimes. So you wonder in what circumstance are people kicking Kent's door in and finding his collection of 1970s centerfolds with big sort of hairy dust collections.
That is rather interesting, isn't it? Is like what constitutes a crime, because basically we could all be arrested for swearing.
Yeah. Jaywalking or not allowing horses to be tied up at our pub and that sort of stuff. Weird stuff.
But it's just not always negative stuff. We found a very, very positive, and we've created a new index. Now, Mike's got a rental loss index, which is all serious.
It's boring.
I've got a different one.
I know.
It's a MILF index.
Oh, my God, here we go.
and this was born of looking at suburbs where there was obesity and fitness, and, we pull apart these research articles or newspaper articles. Some of them probably made up as they go, but some have got a bit of substance to them. And then you start to look at the data, and the data actually supported higher growth rates where there were fitter people. So I converted it to the MILF index.
So you don't know if they're actually good looking. They're just thinner, and you assume. And one thing that Veronica loves is us making sort of aesthetic comments about the female gender. She's given us some really positive feedback on that.
Yes.
Constructive feedback, I think that's what I would say. That's true. Okay, so let's go into causation versus correlation.
No, that's just going to spoil the fun.
When do I get to say rude words?
No, you can't today.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't have a big deck with buttons on it to as I mentioned earlier, and you've got your big deck.
The moment we started putting sound effects into a podcast, we knew there was no coming back. This was going to be awful, but we're here to have fun.
Now, how many listeners do you have?
16.
16? Oh, you're overestimating it a bit.
It's gone up.
What have we got here? Well, I can tell you this: we more than doubled our listenership between September and October. Which is easy to do when you got 16.
32.
Yeah, that's all you need.
33. More than double.
Once we start getting like 100, then we got to get 200. It's really going to be tricky.
That's exponential growth, isn't it? That's fantastic. So, okay, so you've got this sort of strange little pet project that's meant to be a lead gen tool for you, because let's face it, podcasts, we do it for the love. We do it for lots of our own altruistic reasons, but also at the end of the day, we all run businesses. And you've got 33 viewers now, and you're really pitching, which is great. But one of the things that that you actually try to back up or look further into the data for any particular suburb that you're laughing about effectively. One of the things that I've actually enjoyed was the quoting index, the underquoting index.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. So you did your way of actually measuring it, I thought was really lacking. I thought it was not very robust.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
that was Kent's. Okay. That's Kent's data science degree that we put to full use there. Yeah, the data science degree really came out
swinging there, and because basically you declared that Victoria Melbourne was the underquoting capital of Australia, and it was undisputed. once it became number one, it couldn't.
It was you can't top. How do you beat it?
And that therein lies the problem with your methodology. So I'm challenging you to use a different methodology. But that's your little homework. I've got a couple of suggestions for you. But anyway, the thing though, what I found was interesting, you started looking at individual properties that you thought you were calling bullshit. That there's no way that that's going to sell anywhere near the actual guide.
It was going well for a while.
And then what happened?
I got a couple, not entirely wrong. They just weren't. 10% was my tolerance. So if you were outside, if you underquoted by 10%, I would effectively call you out. But if it was 9%, I called myself out and give myself an uppercut. And by I think the third episode, we got through up to about 12 or 13 properties. The 13th property, I had to give myself an uppercut.
That was good. We invited the agent to call in and abuse him, but I don't think they did. And the trouble was, we were picking things where we thought. We even had a segment called
"The Price is Wrong."
Don't know if you got that. And Kent was saying, this is definitely not going to sell for this. And then we realised, well, if we say that on the show, the listeners are going to want us to circle back and go, what did it sell for? Yes. But then we realised we had to sort of like keep an eye on all these listings, and that sounded way too much work. So we just thought it'd be easy to just shut down the whole segment.
And that's why I came up with a methodology to shut the program down. Say, there's the winner, can't dispute it. Victoria, you've won. Melbourne, you've won. And therefore I could get out of the hard work. So...
Things become work. We just shut down the segment, which is a shame because we've got to pay that British voiceover woman regardless.
Yes, and she's got a beautiful, beautiful articulation, although she does use the word data that sounds like Dentec. Anyway, but that's in the intro. So I'm going to read it. Here it says, imagine I could do it. So it says, oh, no, I don't have your website up handy. I was going to read it and pretend to be the British person. So, but overall, though, have you actually learned anything about suburbs that you didn't know before and that might actually frame up or inform your property smarts a bit better? Or is it pure comedy?
I think like I started out thinking this was going to have a bit of an edge, a political edge to it, because I think that there's a big problem emerging with, the house price growth has been fantastic and it's terrific for headlines, but for every one person that's winning, I think it's become a zero-sum game, and there's a loser now. And I think we're picking on some of these locations that are lower socioeconomic, but we're trying to balance it with the higher socioeconomic as well. So we go from picking on the snobs to picking on the lower socioeconomic bogan areas.
With your bogan-ometer. Let's not pretend that we're highbrow and you've got some humanitarian mission.
No, I'm abusing something called the CEFA index, the socioeconomic index from the ABS. So I abuse that for my own benefit. So I thought we were going to have a bit of fun, but have a political undertone to it. But it's just morphed into silly.
It is a bit silly at times, but I do laugh a lot out loud, and there's something to be said for that. So laughing a lot out loud, that is, and that's why it's still on my top of my list of property podcasts. Because
have you ever listened to? Have you ever got the book or read the book "Shit Towns of Australia"?
No, but I have actually followed their Facebook page as a consequence of your podcast.
Gold, right? Gold. That was probably the big incentive here, and so Mike bought this book for me. And it's just one of my little, and talk about laugh out loud. You read through it and some of the things they write, you just can't help yourself. It's a laugh out loud thing. And that was a lot of the inspiration, some hero worship. So buy the book. I think anyone listening should buy the book.
We'll have to find the link and stick it in the show notes. So with the shit towns, actually, because now I do follow their Facebook page, and I've noticed they shit ton, like, what do you call it, Byron Bay.
It won.
We hate Byron. I hate Byron Bay not because of the book or anything else. I hate Byron Bay because I've been there many a time, and I hate it more every time I go there. I had a holiday there at the end of last year, and we were 3 days into a 7-day holiday, and I came home.
Okay, what's wrong with Byron Bay?
It's full of shitheads.
Sydney people.
Are they visiting like you, or are they the locals?
You've got a mixture of both. So what you've got Sydney is you've got the local hoons that want to beat the crap out of your little kid, your kids who we had a whole stack of these Christian college kids who wouldn't know how to punch their way out of a brown paper bag, right? Getting, heaped on by kids that are a couple of years older and toughies. So we had that at one end of the extreme. And then you got these toffs in big, expensive Range Rovers or whatever who think it's their God-given right to park crossways, take up 2 or 3 car spaces. And you got this, and then you got foul language everywhere you go. It's F this, F that. And
what's wrong with that?
That's fine with a podcast where you can hit, you can hit the button, the big deck button. But this was everywhere. So, these people didn't care if you had a little kid with you or whatever. So the whole place is just full of misbehaving a-holes, ranging from misbehaving rich a-holes to bogan a-holes and whatever and drunks. And it's totally spoiled a beautiful place. So we hate it.
There's places only stay cool for a while until people figure it out, and then they disappear. It's going west too. Like places like Mullumbimby are already sort of seeing the people that have that have ruined Byron sort of heading that way. It's a real thing. I can remember going to Nimbin as essentially a child. I think I was 15. I was there for 5 minutes, and a guy came up to me and he said, "I heard you were looking for an ounce." And that's lovely. That just that's the sort of vibe that I want. And that's what I think Byron has lost.
How much did it cost?
I went to Nimbin.
No comment.
I've been to Nimbin a couple of times actually. And the first time we went out there, I was, in my early 20s. And I couldn't believe how beautiful that hinterland is. He's one of the most spectacular parts of the world, I think. And
did you see Pete?
I didn't see Pete. I don't think Pete was there then, when I was that young.
He's our favourite.
Mike might have been there when he was 15 at the same time. And I was walking through the street. I was really quite astounded that why would you be wasted when you are literally in one of the most beautiful places on the planet? Like, why would you then write yourself off and get totally wasted?
Because it's more beautiful.
Kids were naked in the streets, it was just in the main street, that is, like just wandering around naked, quite a few of them, not just one. So it was a bit of disappointment for me.
How does that differ to Newtown?
Well, they do the naked thing they get off their face on ice here at Hamilton in Newcastle, and they walk around in the neck. Something to do with ice and getting your gear off.
Well, hopefully these little kids weren't on ice. Well, that's a long time ago, and I'm not sure ice was even invented. Now, okay, so you hate Byron, and Shit Towns hates Byron as well, which I thought was funny because the prices of Byron have gone
It's always voted number one.
Heaps of people love Byron, and so that then attracts, and maybe the locals hate it now because basically it's been changed and they can't afford to live there any longer. But there was an article in the Herald I saw maybe a week ago, looking for the next Byron, and so it was basically trying to predict, all the places down
Yamba.
the New South Wales
We
coast.
talked about that. We did Yamba. We talked about that article, I think, and they said Yamba was going to be the next one.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like if I was a Yamburnian local, I'd be terrified. The moment that I saw a black Range Rover, I'd sell up. I mean,
really, you should wait a couple of years because then you're going to get more when you sell up.
That's right. That's this. Yeah. Now we're talking about investing advice. So I would move out, rent the place out, and then sell up.
Actually, that's not bad. Yeah.
But they have been putting up with people going from Grafton every weekend, so they're pretty resilient lot in Yamba.
So back to your I can't even say it, bogan-ometer. Because you did come out with some stats that shows that there was, there's a bogan element that actually is good for property prices, right?
There's been some interesting movements, and what you'll find is there's areas that have even suburbs or areas, markets that you think high profile, whatever, have got a mixed bag. There's a lot of mixed bag suburbs out there. And what I've done is rather than take the CEFA index, which is your average socioeconomic for the suburb, and it might say 7 or 8, what you find is if you split it up and measure it by the neighbourhood, which is what they do at an SA1 level using the ABS, there are neighbourhoods that are lower socioeconomic neighbourhoods. And what's of interest is a lot of the buyers agents, talking about something serious for a minute, like to avoid streets or neighbourhoods that have got public housing. That's an example. But there's a flip side to that, because the ripple effect does flow into these. So once you find that there's a really big surge in price, it flows into those neighbourhoods. So the locals avoid it, but the out-of-towners or the people who kind of say, I can put up with our fibro house next door, they flood in. So it's like a dam, and suddenly it flows over the top and fills it up pretty quick. So that's an interesting thing that we've observed, is looking at these neighbourhoods of lower socioeconomics in a high demand, high growth market that we've seen over the last couple of years. Some of them have done rather well. So it's not all gloom and doom when it comes to a bogan spot.
And I guess I should have asked you, what's your definition of bogan?
Oh, we just make it up as we go.
And I've heard you say that you have the right to comment on bogans because
I'm a houso. I'm a houso from Macquarie Fields.
I'm a house.
Whereas Mike's a
Kenty
penis.
from the block, he likes to be called.
Yes. So it's the penist and the houso. It's like the cook and the chef.
Oh my God!
You purposely pronounced that like penis, didn't you?
Which
Correct.
does remind me a bit of Dame Edna. I know what. No, not Dame Edna. Celeste Patterson. Do you remember Dame Edna and Celeste? I know what you're looking at. You're looking at my penis.
We equate it to sort of like an African American man. There's a certain word that he can use to describe himself and his brethren that would get you shot in the Bronx, say. So Kent can say the bogan thing because he grew up under a sheeted tin raised by dingoes. Whereas then I'm trying to sort of play the other side, and all I've got, my claim to fame, is the grandmother who was the elocution teacher and studying classical piano at a conservatorium for a bit. But the truth is, I'm a bit rough around the edges myself.
We can hear it. We can hear it.
No. He doesn't sound it. He's got quite, rounded vowels.
People accuse me of being English a lot, and I say, no, I just put G's on the end of words what ought to have them.
Snob. If you hear the screaming in the background, it's my poodle when my wife comes home. So it's not, I haven't abducted a young child. I stopped doing that a long time ago. So
you should not say that, Kent.
What?
It's too soon to that Western Australian thing.
Definitely not say that. This is the wrong podcast.
Okay, take it back. Take it back.
Jokes like that. However, the poodle and you, it does make me laugh to think that you have a poodle.
Yeah. And a Bichon Frise.
That's even worse.
You walk along the beach at Newcastle and everyone else has got a Rottweiler or a pit bull or whatever, neck tattoos, and I walk past with my little lap dogs.
What's the dog that's got like a beard?
A Schnauzer.
A Schnauzer.
Oh,
so
I
actually was walking along the streets of Erskineville yesterday, and I saw this guy with a big bushy, beard, because he's a hipster, and he had a Schnauzer with a matching beard. It was like reversed, like it was reversed in colour. The Schnauzer had a white beard and the guy had a dark beard. It was quite weird. But anyway, another guy, quite a big guy, with a lot of very floppy hair, a bit like me. He hasn't had a haircut since lockdown yet, and really quite shaggy. And he had this little sort of, terrier thing with exactly the same colour fur, and it looked exactly the same. It's almost like his head was a terrier. Anyway, that we do digress. So
I need a white perm.
I would have thought
all on its way to Yamba.
I would have thought that I could qualify for being a bogan as well, because I did grow up in the Shire. It's a little bit like Fountain Lakes.
It's not. I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't call it bogan as much as it's just yobbo.
Definitely yobbo. And,
racist.
And people did say something.
Racist. You invented racism.
Yes, after I moved out. Oh, no, maybe probably before I moved out.
Is that a Eureka Stockade flag I see in the background?
Yes.
And the Cronulla riots.
Show us your Southern Cross tattoo.
Have you got a postcode tattoo?
I escaped the Shire and I have not been back. But when I was filming the show, little known story here, I don't think I've ever told this story on the podcast before, but I had to say things in voiceover, such as, in a land as vast as Australia. And at first when I said it, in a land as vast as Australia,
oh dear.
and the producers were like, cringe, because that's not how Australians sound on television. And so I had to go to have some, it's not quite speech therapy, but some elocution.
Elocution.
My grandmother.
And learn some piano while you're at it.
And learning to play the piano. And I was taught how to throw my vowels to the front of my mouth and not talk like this. And so I can do your bogan, mate. I can. See you at the pub. See you on Friday at the pub. I can do it because that's where I grew up, where we did speak bogan, but we weren't housos, I have to say. So
No.
I can't claim that, and I can't get away with that. But I did have to go and learn how to speak properly. And when I was seeing this woman who was teaching me how to speak properly, one day she said to me, "How long ago did you leave the Shire?" And I said to her, "That's amazing. How did you know I lived in the Shire? Did they put it in my bio?" And she said, "No, I could hear it in your voice."
Oh,
What?
That's not a
Yes.
compliment.
Did you say? Did you criticise foreigners? Yeah, I think you gave it away.
I must have criticised foreigners. But, you know,
Did she offer you some pita bread and you said, "Get that shit out of here"?
Yeah.
I was mortified.
Put more pineapple on it.
I spent decades trying to rid my voice of Shire, and there I was, a voice expert, could pick it in a second.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I have learned since to say a land as vast as Australia, and that is my go-to now. If ever I need to get the bogan out of my voice, I go back to that phrase, in a land as vast as Australia. But however, so we're going back to sort of bogan and the definition of bogan, and you're talking about housing commission areas, which is now called social housing, I do believe, and that typically people would tend to avoid buying property in those areas because of fear of, I guess,
Getting
crime.
Lack of
stabbed.
capital growth or
Lack of capital growth and safety and all those sorts of things. I did read an article some years back and I had personally lived very close to social housing on two occasions that I'm actually, two that I'm aware of. And I remember reading this art. In both cases, we've been robbed. And I don't know whether we were robbed by the people who lived in the nearby social housing or somewhere else because they never caught them. However, the assumption always has been, it was the nearby social housing. When I lived in Annandale, when we were robbed, they stole a safe because we were renting years and years and years ago, and the safe was not bolted down and it was upstairs. And so they got the safe, and obviously not too big a safe.
Good effort.
Two people could, good effort. They threw it out the window. There's a big divot in the ground outside where it had landed. Then they took it, right, and everything that was in it. Now, when I went, because across the park was this big social housing complex, and I thought maybe our safe is lying around
Parked
there
out the front.
And there was a sort of a stormwater canal thing there as well. And I went for a walk. I didn't find our safe, but I did find three others.
Oh, dear.
Can you believe it, right? So I think, okay, and still might not have been them. Like it still might not have been the residents of that housing complex. It might have been others coming in from the area. But this article I'm referring to that I read did talk about the fact that you living close to it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get robbed, because where the robbers come from is where they can get the train to. Now, Annandale is not near a train station, nor is Balmain, where the other one that I live near. And so I'm just wondering, have you guys ever actually looked into the, where robbers come from, and do they use public transport?
If you like what you're hearing here, please share this episode with others you feel would benefit. And while you're at it, why not leave us an iTunes review? 5 stars, please. Every review helps make it easier for other people to find us and hear what our amazing guests have to say. We love hearing your questions, and we're planning more listener Q&A episodes. Please send your questions in. You can send them via the website, which is theelephantintheroom.com.au, or directly via email to questions@theelephantintheroom.com.au.
That's interesting. We did do. We are really fascinated by the crime. I mean, we we shared the story about the Big Bird costume that was stolen from a travelling Sesame Street sort of circus in Adelaide. So we're pretty plugged into that. We did do a special on the most train station violence recorded in New South Wales, and that was a place called Waratah in Newcastle, which I lived for a while. I guess I got very drunk on the weekends and hit a lot of people. I can't remember it though.
You
but
think it was you?
Yeah, it could be. I don't know. I'm just that rough and tumble sort of guy, Veronica. But
were you worried about your hands and playing the piano if you were going to hit people?
it was all right when it was Kent. Now when it's the both of you, I just feel ganged up on. No, we see, unfortunately, there is a strong correlation between people who are not financially well off and crime. But our view is that they don't go and steal and do crimes in their backyard. They go to nice places to do it because there's better stuff. But when you look at the crimes, like in some of the well-to-do areas, like there was a special that we did, and was it Belrose or one of those places? Rose Bay, I think maybe, where the greatest sort of crime was like alcohol-related crimes, and it was sort of like underage drinking and stuff. So it's probably sort of drunk mum and dad sending the kids out to go and pick up another sort of Bollinger and that sort of stuff. But
another carton of Grange.
Yeah, the crimes are different in the places where the median house price is under $1 million.
and I think the fraud was a really interesting statistics and where that was showing up. So we made the assumption that fraud was white collar, but it's not. It's migrated to bogan collar.
Really?
Yeah, because it's all like the identity theft stuff. So back in the Catch Me If You Can days, fraud was sort of sophisticated. You had to have a printer. You had to sort of figure out like what could be stolen that had a value. Now it's just kind of like you nick a wallet and you go and use the credit card, and that's considered financial fraud. So it's lovely to see different areas of the sort of social diaspora taking over the mantle of some of these crimes that were previously only afforded to the 1%ers.
It's the democratization of
crime. Yeah,
That's
look at that. That could be an episode title, Kent.
I like that.
Be. Yeah, save that up for another time. All right, so
what was the question?
No, I'm just. Now what I want to do, I want to go into another one of your segments, which is the it's not The Price Is Wrong. It's I don't even know what you call it.
We get confused. I get confused.
Yeah, I do notice that you guys are confused.
I pick one of the titles and I make them up as I go, and I do my own voiceover for the segment as well.
When you're not relying on the British lady.
We make segments up on the fly.
Which is fabulous, and I do like that. Now, but this one is quite cool, and that's when you look at, well-regarded publications and their top 10 lists.
Oh, the idiots.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one.
It's just it's lazy spreadsheet sorting, So step one, get the junior clerk in the office to grab the spreadsheet of the medians. Step two, sort them. Sort them by price change, 3 months, 6 months. Sort them by yield, whatever. And you get the crap. The crap anomalies rise to the top, and we celebrate that. So please, big magazine companies that portray yourself as investment specialists, please do not change how you do things.
Keep it up. We love it. We need the material. I think it's called
Wrong Opinion.
Oh,
Wrong Opinions?
Beautiful.
Was that it?
Wrong Opinions.
Yep.
Yes. So what are some of the wrongest opinions that you've debunked?
It's a growth. Typically the highest growth rate suburbs. And we found one that actually had gone backwards because the sample size was 1.
The main thing is that, this place will get, 118% growth and top the nation, and 3 things have sold. And, one was like a shed that they used to film, underground filth, and then the other one was on the water, and they're comparing them side by side and go, look at that growth of the suburb. It is just lazy, absolute garbage.
But it's perfect.
Oh, it is perfect. And I've been constantly surprised by that over the years when I've seen these top 10 lists, and I think, hang on a minute, it doesn't take a lot of curiosity even, or just that whole that can't be right sort of thinking. Is there a word for that? To actually just dig a little bit and go, that shouldn't be in the list because, for those reasons.
Doesn't it tell you something, though, that these are businesses that have been portraying themselves as specialists on the topic of investment for many a year.
Yeah.
Putting out absolute junk that's easily challenged and proven wrong.
Yeah, and I am amazed myself at, you see these money magazines and all those sort of magazines, and they've got the experts' top tips for the coming year. They're probably on the bookshelves, on the newsagent shelves now. They're exactly that headline because it's the typical headline that you'll see at this time time of year. And I'm always amazed that the experts are so desperate for a bit of publicity that they'll get their face on these and then they'll actually give a top 10 or a top 5 or whatever. Like, it actually astounds me. And when I've been asked for them over the years, I've always said no. And at first I said no basically because I knew I'd have to pluck names out of my head, out of somewhere else potentially. And that stopped me. But do these people just not get stopped by the idea of plucking names out of their ass, or do they actually apply some level of lazy spreadsheeting to this?
It's lazy spreadsheeting.
Or
not,
they think
not knowing.
They think, where are my properties again? Oh, yeah, these are the suburbs that are going to boom.
There we go.
Oh my God, you're being so cynical. So tell me, Suburb Trolls, is it going to continue?
Well, until it gets shut down. But I think it's reaching new heights. We actually had President Emmanuel Macron call in for episode 15, which I'm going to launch shortly, which will be launched before this is. He apparently couldn't get through the diplomatic channels and wanted to talk about the French submarine deal. So we're attracting some real A-listers, and of course we had yourself as a guest. So I think we'll keep going until the government says we can't.
Hence using the wrong language. I don't think I can say social housing or community housing occupant. It just doesn't rhyme like houso.
Houso does a certain, certain, I don't know, it's got a delicious sort of feeling when you say it. And I know that show that was on SBS some years ago, Housos.
What's their new one? Their new one's
The Bogan Hunter.
Bogan Hunter.
Oh, that is scary. That is scary, that show. I have seen it. Yeah, here
we go, actually. Elizabeth, because we did episode 16, which hasn't been released yet.
It will have been.
Yeah, it will have been. Gosh, this is like Inception or something.
I know.
Oh, shit, the building's folding.
Oh, gosh.
It's a time warp.
My skin's starting to peel. I feel like I'm in a Dali painting. Anyway, that's enough references to that. They did
the mushrooms again.
So cultured.
Oh, God.
I know.
You shouldn't have stopped in the Nimbin. I told you not to.
I know. It's those bloody mushrooms. They did the top bogan suburbs around the country, and we did that on show 16. So Tassie was like Ravenswood and Launceston, Queensland was Logan. Big surprise. We've done a bit of work with Logan. Sydney, Mount Druitt, Campbelltown, of course. Campbelltown was featured on Shit Towns today, I think. And yeah, Adelaide was Elizabeth because it was 109.96 incidents per 100 residents and double the second place crime suburb. And Roslyn Park in South Australia has 0.96 incidents per 100. So Roslyn Park is it's the snob suburb of Adelaide.
What was interesting, Mike challenged me. He said, I want 10 bogan suburbs of high growth and 10 snob suburbs of high growth. And it was amazing how many of the bogan suburbs I'd actually lived in or my family lives in.
It just looks like a GPS tracker of Kent Lardner's life.
So the question has to be, do Lardner people or Lardner family members still own property in each of those suburbs, and potentially was there some bias?
Could we have done? Yeah, could we have done quite well?
In how you put together that
If you
list.
stop burning them down, then they'd be worth a fortune.
Our conclusion was that these places boom when I leave, and there's something to that. Parties start to happen when I leave.
One of your episodes did talk about the fact that there are certain suburbs where you have huge element of social housing, and I've talked about two that are very blue chip suburbs, Annandale and Balmain. Glebe's another. There's a lot of social housing in Glebe, and certainly once again it's that locals know where to avoid, et cetera, and some years back I had a client come to me and said, right, found this property on, I won't say the street just because in case we're casting aspersions. Is that the right word? It's not casting dispersions, is it? Anyway.
I keep saying dispersions.
Casting aspersions. I don't want to cast aspersions on Pacific streets. This particular street, however, we looked at this house and they had spent quite a lot of money renovating it, and it was beautifully done, really nice home. And these clients who just signed up for us to evaluate this particular property, they said, oh, we love it, we want to buy it. I said, okay, well, how well do you know Glebe? Oh, not really well at all. And I said, okay, well, let's just step outside for a moment. I want you to look up and down the street. There was more amplimesh on front doors and windows in the street than I've seen ever in any street ever. And I'm like, there's a little bit of a sign that maybe a lot of these houses are not actually owner occupied. So let's just have a look. And so I got on to RP data, and all I could see actually in 4 blocks, quite a long street, 4 blocks, I could only actually show that 6 houses had ever actually transacted. So you think, that's interesting, ever in recorded history that was.
Who was the owner?
And so they were 6 owner-occupied homes, whereas in 4 blocks, and so everything else, yes, who was the owner. So then I called the police, and so the police do have a community liaison person quite often, and I called the police and I said, I've got a client that's, we're looking at buying a house in this particular street. Oh, yes, I know that street. I said, they said, oh, what number? Oh, yeah, I know that number. So 2 doors up, there's, the Burkes live in that house, and they're not too bad now that the eldest son's moved out. And on the other corner, you've got the Farrells. They live there, and they're a bit dodgy actually because Dad just moved back in. Then basically could name nearly every house in the street, and
frequent flyers.
Went back to the client and said, look, these are the neighbours, and some of them, according to the police liaison person, are fine, and others might be a little problematic. What do you want to do? Anyway, they didn't buy the property. But it was interesting, though, that the police liaison knew them by name, is all I can say. So, but that is in an area that's in a suburb that's blue chip. And I know that you sort of talked about some of these suburbs that have both. They have that real high end and they've got the low end in the same data set, right?
Newcastle is famous for this. And South Coogee, Maroubra.
Yep.
It's everywhere. But it's interesting because one particular state government's looking very closely at the moment of ways to cash in on those locations that are of very, very high value.
Don't mention that because you leaked that to me and I still haven't bought anything yet.
And it's like, this is interesting. I'm not going to name who, but I think it's going to be. I think it's the right thing. Now I came up with a formula,
God, yeah, this is interesting.
It wasn't well planned out. It was just my theory was that
disclaimer. This is purely the opinion of Kent Lardner, not the opinion
and it's a very inappropriate, very poorly thought out disclaimer. So, and it was based on if I can move you, based on how many years you've lived there and how many kilometres I move you out, and we can put a lot of money in your pocket. And the formula was try and get your 10K out if I can house another couple of families. So there was a good social responsible element to it because I'm effectively saying if I can sell that house, I can probably build 2.5 if I move to 10K away or whatever. So that was the rhyme and reason. But what we did on the show, which was really inappropriate, and it was Mike's fault, not mine, we were talking about all the things they could do with their money because we were giving them a really good payout based on how many years you were there and how many K you moved away. And that buys a lot of ice and a really nice Commodore.
I would be suggesting, though, deep down underneath all that mess of crazy little theory, there's probably some elements of little gems, right?
It was born of something real. And I think you've got to look after that. You've got to look after these people. Give them a life-changing experience, put them in a new property and build 1.5 more, or build, effectively house double the amount of people because of this transaction. Everyone wins.
Well, because obviously land values differ in different locations, and from an asset management point of view, the government has an asset that they've got to optimise. Community-wise, potentially, if they move the entire community, that might be better. If established ties and all that sort of thing, because there's displacement. There are those social.
Pay someone enough money, it's all good.
Well, maybe you could also put in sort of a rent to buy model as well, potentially, for those who wish to, and those who aspire to property. I mean, so there are ways that you can actually fold in a social benefit and increase housing and increase affordability for certain segments of the market. So, there's a little gem of something. They're not new
ideas. They're very old ideas. The governments in the 60s and 70s were very active in this space.
We were going to tackle these big issues, but then we just kind of
went down the drain hole.
Yeah, we just kind of.
I was going to say rabbit hole. It's not a rabbit hole. It's just a drain hole.
The drain hole.
Kent just wanted to talk about his MILF index.
Do you feel that you've really let yourselves down a bit?
No,
we got a long way to go. It's funny
long drain.
Funny you describe it as a lead gen thing. I actively hide that I'm the host of this show. I don't think anyone in my database, and thankfully I've got another podcast which is like the legitimate front. So I just go, I've got a podcast. It's this one, and they go, haven't you got another one? I'm like, shh, like just behind the curtain.
But I've been on your legitimate one. It's really boring.
Yeah.
Like just talking really,
Yeah, I give advice. I ask people their opinions. I say nice things. I don't swear. I don't have any buttons.
The price is wrong.
Oh, geez. I just hope that my wife never tunes into the podcast.
I suspect, Kent, that your wife has stopped listening to you some time ago. Yeah,
that makes sense. I actually, this guy, Darren, who I shouldn't have said this, but Darren is obviously a regular caller that's a plant on our show. Yeah.
What?
I know. I'm breaking the fourth wall or something. Yeah. Actually, the first time Darren rang in, it was a complete surprise to Kent. He had no idea what was happening. He didn't even know I had a phone button.
Stitch up.
Yeah.
Total stitch up.
Suddenly I'm like, oh, hold on, Kent. We've got someone on the line. And he's just, I was just watching him on Zoom because this was mid-COVID, and he was just sat there with his mouth open. And at one point I had to say, like, Kent, you're a bit quiet. Like, what's going on? Because I'm like, come on, dude. Like, we're recording a podcast here.
It was so brilliant. And he's talking about his wife was on OnlyFans, and then he went into a whole new level of wrong. Which I then thought, hey, have you heard about my NoFans website? I pay people to watch me get my kid off. Not a good business model, but it's fun.
We bought the domain and everything. But this chappie, Darren, he said to my wife on the weekend, have you listened to Suburb Trolls? And she said, no, what's that? And I'm like, oh, Christ. And she came back from a run, and she says to me, And you are right. All nipples are beautiful. And I thought that requires.
We've got to explain it. Since we started the show, we've both been inundated on a daily basis by friend requests with people with really robotic sounding names, odd names, and they've all got the same description of their bodies. It's talking about certain parts of their anatomy. Right. And it's like, what the hell? I don't care what the reddish tinge is. I'm not into the reddish tinge thing. And we've both been flooded by reddish tinge offers.
That's bizarre.
It's just the weirdest thing.
So the Facebook bots have decided that your image?
They have.
I don't know what it is. Suddenly now the bots are targeting us, thinking we're two old perverts, which is not, totally.
Still
inappropriate.
clinging to my
Far from the
30s.
truth.
Thank you very much.
And I'm curious, so is Darren the real Darren? We're not going to use his real name, are we? But Darren, the person behind Darren, the actor who is Darren,
Yeah.
is he a Novocastrian?
No, he's not. No, he's
so
an
you
import.
do know other people outside of Newcastle?
Oh my gosh! Oh, just because we're not some, Newtown socialite, cosmopolitan, braiding my hair interspersed with hashish smoke clouds, doesn't mean that we
Do they
can't.
still do hashish in the inner west, Veronica?
My neighbours do.
Really? That was a thing in the 70s, but
You can often smell it wandering around the back streets of Newtown.
Really?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
sure it's just not the normal kind of grass
I think
fed?
that's what it is. I think that's the smell. It's just something different that I haven't smelt before, and I figured that might be what
Right?
it is.
Yeah, from the Shire. You haven't come across that. No one's buying
but
this.
you've got to remember, I grew up in a Christian home. It wasn't until I spread my wings and escaped both that cage and the Shire's cage that I realised that there were things like that out there in the world.
And your boogie board bag doesn't have to have a boogie board in it.
Apparently not. Now, we're sort of nearing the end of this rambling chat, which I'm hoping people have
Thank God for
enjoyed because, as I said, it's a bit lighthearted and it's a holiday episode. Do you have a Dumbo for us? Because we do love a Dumbo example. For our listeners can actually learn something if they've listened to all this trollop that we've been trotting out through our chat today. Do we have something that will help them a takeaway?
Mike,
No?
I think Mike does.
Yeah, Emmanuel Macron. We tackled him on the show, and we honestly kind of think, ScoMo as a diplomatic sort of chappie representing our interests abroad, like leaking a text message is kind of like it's a little bit schoolyard sort of stuff. So he gets a Dumbo of the week for that. But Macron as well. I mean, if your merch isn't up to snuff, then don't get upset about it. But the funny thing is the French do actually have a nuclear submarine, so I don't know what went wrong. I had to do research to find out things about it. But Macron can just sort of go and jam it up his noodle line
Yeah,
bottom.
it's the right shape, isn't it? The sub?
Yeah.
It's the right shape to shove it.
Suppository.
Oh, my God. Right. Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap this one up. Hope you're having a lovely holiday, boys. Christmas treated you well and all that sort of stuff. And there you go.
Off to Byron.
Off to Byron.
All I want for Christmas is to ruin a sleepy coastal hamlet.
Ah, dear. Yes. Well, there's, just back to that Herald article. There's the other sleepy coastal hamlets. Better be on the lookout
Go to Yamba.
Yamba.
for the big Black Range Rovers brigade. All right. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
If you're looking to buy your dream home or an investment property in Sydney's inner west, eastern suburbs or North Shore, my team and I can help you buy without regrets. Reach out via my website, gooddeeds.com.au.
If you're looking to buy your first home, thinking of upgrading into a new one, or purchasing an investment property anywhere in Australia, my team love to carefully guide you on this journey. And most importantly, get the finance right. Reach out via our website, wealthful.com.au.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love to see you again.
And remember, don't be a Dumbo.